Hi guys, how are you all today morning? Good morning. Today is 16th September 2023. My name is TSV Raghavan and I live in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India. This is my spiritual vlog on YouTube. Hardan, 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 Haribol, TRSV, Nectar, NECTAR, Nectar. In this particular vlog, in all my previous videos, we have been discussing about the knowledge and information that we have gleaned through the study of spiritual books, scriptures, contemplation on the material universe, and meditation on the spiritual universe. This particular video in this vlog is no exception to that rule. In fact, it is a mere continuation of all that we have been doing in my previous videos. Hence, kindly subscribe to this vlog and press the bell icon so that I may keep reminding you of all my previous and future videos. So let us continue with the topic for discussion for today's video. Today we shall start discussing about a new topic where we will try to understand spiritualism and contemplation better. In other words, meditation on spiritualism and contemplation on materialism. According to Swami Yogananda Paramhansa in his own autobiography called Autobiography of a Yogi, his own spiritual teacher Swami Yukteswaragiri once told him, "This material world is like one tight small basket which is hanging on a balance under the huge spiritual world." We all know how huge this material world is, how big every universe in this material world is. If this complete material world is put into one small basket and made to hang under the belly of some spiritual world, then you can imagine how big or infinite in size and mass this spiritual world should be. It is at least a trillion times bigger than this material world, and both the material world and the spiritual world are still growing day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute, and second by second. Now we will try to understand this as far as our cerebral faculties and our psyche goes and explains them to us. According to Swami Chinmayananda, he once described our own stature and identity. He said, this material world is huge, but it is only one part of the spiritual world. In this material world, there are trillions of Milky Ways and galaxies. Each galaxy in every Milky Way has trillions of solar systems. In each solar system, there are several planets that revolve around that solar system. Every planet has life in it of different forms. Our planet Earth is one of such planets that revolves around one of the suns of one of the solar systems of one galaxy which is in one Milky Way. This Earth has 7 continents which together make only a fraction of the complete Earth. Among these continents, we live in one of those continents. Every continent has several countries. Every country has several villages, towns, and cities. Every town, village, or city has several houses. Every house has a couple of rooms in itself depending upon its own size. In every room, a couple of persons live. We are one among those persons. We live in one of the rooms of one of the apartments in one block or colony of that city, and we are occupying only one corner of that room at a time. Sitting in that minuscule, minuscule, immaterial corner, we think that we can lord it over this whole material nature. How laughable this is! It means that we are not even nobody. That is, we are not even zero yet. We are somewhere in the negative, and it will take a lot of time for us to reach even that zero. However, despite this, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has been kind enough to tell each one of us that we have every right to contemplate on this material world and meditate on this spiritual world. To facilitate this and To encourage us, he has tried to create a universe of its own in each of us living entities, whether human or not. Every living entity in this world is a universe in itself, himself, or herself. However, we will try to concentrate only on the human living entities, whether male or female. As for example, I, as a human living entity, am a universe within myself. If I want, I can remain happy studying that particular universe within me. Instead of looking at the universe outside me, which most of us do endlessly, if I try to look within my own cerebral faculties or brain, I will be able to understand myself and the universe in which I live better than I did when my two eyes were looking into this material world. However, I would hasten to add that unless and until these two eyes got tired of looking at the material world outside, I would not have drawn my attention towards the third eye that is situated between my two eyebrows and which looks into my own brain and tries to find out the universe within myself. In this universe, because we are living in a material world, at least 95% is totally material. There is only one tiny window that opens into the enormous, gigantic, infinite spiritual world. Now we will try to analyze this better. We will go step by step to understand this. When our third eye opens within and we concentrate on what it is seeing, then we find that this particular third eye is looking into our own brain. This brain is actually just a very complicated mass of tissues which controls and monitors and regulates the gross body of our own stature or identity. In other words, this brain controls, regulates, and monitors how we react into the material world outside. Now, this brain has one conical shaped structure of the size of a pea, which is known as the pineal gland. When our third eye peers into this brain, sooner or later it is able to find that pineal gland. This pineal gland itself is actually a very tiny ventilator outside into the material and spiritual world, which depends on our own faculty how we exploit this pineal gland. In other words, our own destiny, karma, surroundings, atmosphere, knowledge, experience, and maturity decide on what we see through this pineal gland. 95% of us human beings concentrate on looking into only this material world and enjoy our own experiences watching through the pineal gland into this material world, which is far more interesting and intriguing than the material world that our other two eyes see when they look outside into the material world. In fact, this pineal gland is a ventilator through which we can peer into the space of this material world. We are able to marvel at the complexity of the situation and the size and gigantism of this material world. Space scientists, researchers, intellectuals, etc., are only able to watch this or observe all this only through their pineal gland. Let us be just and humble enough to concentrate only on seeing the material world outside. It is a world or a universe in itself. If we do not lose ourselves in it, we will be able to benefit from it many folds. We will be able to gather the material knowledge many folds by looking through this pineal gland. According to the internationally renowned Mr. Sanjeev Malik, who is a spiritualist and the one who runs a company called Past Life Transgression or Regression, has once said that when an individual, a living human entity's third eye is open and it is able to look within itself or himself or herself, he feels or she feels like peering through a tunnel. This tunnel's one mouth opens just outside that third eye into the brain of that particular human living entity. This is subtle and imaginary, but that person can visualize it as a real tunnel. This tunnel goes horizontal for some distance and then it moves upwards and opens through the Sahasrara chakra into the infinite space of this material world. This person hence is able to concentrate on enjoying this sight endlessly for his or her own benefit and knowledge. This tunnel, as mentioned before, opens initially horizontally. Here, this particular living entity is able to watch every cell in his or her own brain. As we all know, there are trillions of cells interconnected within our own brain. This brain, in turn, takes vibrations from our own three subtle bodies, which are known as causal body of intelligence and logic, astral body of mind, feelings and emotions, and the etheric body of senses, namely sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. This brain or this mass of tissue, which is situated inside the skull of the gross body of our own gross body as human living entities, is actually a conduit between these three subtle bodies and the rest of the gross body. When we peer into this brain, we find how this brain is able to take vibrations transmitted from these three subtle bodies into its own cells continuously. We also see how, according to our own destiny, karma, experience, knowledge, maturity, surroundings, atmosphere, etc., some of these vibrations from one or more of these subtle bodies is selected according to the whims, choice, fantasies, etc. of our own brain. When these vibrations are selected, our own brain masticates and chews on them for some time. Once it does, it extracts some juice out of such vibrations. That vibration or that juice is percolated through the rest of our own gross body by the same brain, and hence all the reactions that we in the gross body do are actually because of the juice of the vibrations of our own subtle body now processed and percolated through our gross body. Depending upon the quality of the vibrations selected by our own brain, our body reacts, and we are identified by our own actions and karma at a particular time in our own lifetime in a particular birth. This is a normal, perpetual, and continuous process which begins with our birth in a particular lifetime and ends when that lifetime ends at our death. This is the normal proceeding or procedure in every human living entity's life. This we have discussed in many of our own videos. However, to begin with, let us first study our own brain, our own subtle bodies, gross body, vibrations, and transmissions from our subtle bodies to the brain, and the use of such vibrations being percolated into our own gross body. Once we reach a saturation point in studying this particular phenomenon, we get tired, and then the same tunnel which was horizontal in its direction turns upwards through the pineal gland into the Sahasrara chakra, which is situated at the imaginary and subtle center of the thousand petal lotus in the cranium of every one of us human living entities, male or female. The second mode of this tunnel opens out into the space of this material world. When it does, our third eye is able to gaze at the vast material world, which many space scientists of yore, in the past, in the present, or in their future, will gaze at to acquire material knowledge. This particular wonderful mass of this material world is so interesting and intriguing that one human living entity, whether male or female, can spend his or her complete lifetime watching through every cell of this material world. You would be surprised to know that according to scientists, each ordinary cell is a universe in itself. In other words, what we are looking into this space is actually in minuscule form present as a blueprint into every cell. In other words, we as human living entities can understand this material world by contemplating within ourselves and trying to find out the complexity of this material world. The second is the even larger spiritual world. According to my own contemplation, because we are all in this material world, we, whether we are monks, rishis, saints, godmen, or any such beings, are only a link between this material world and the other spiritual world. We, when we get self realized, reach a particular position where we are a little qualified than the average human living entity to understand this spiritual world better. Kindly never be under any wrong impression that any spiritualist, howsoever big he or she may be, howsoever evolved he or she may be, is not a part and parcel of that spiritual world yet. He or she becomes a part and parcel of that spiritual world only when he or she gets delivered into the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Krishna, Brahma, Maharshi Bhrigu, Lord Shiva, etc. are such entities who are already delivered into the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But we, as mere mortals, are only a link between the spiritual world and the material world. At best, we can work on getting self realized, liberated from this endless cycle of birth and death, and then dream of getting delivered as fully evolved souls into the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Till then, we have to be happy and proud to be eternal servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this material world, either as monks, saints, maharishis, rishis, etc., or as God men, celestial beings, angels, demigods, etc. Even demigods cannot claim to be totally delivered into the Supreme Personality of Godhead. At best, they are far, 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 far superior than we, the ordinary living entities. Yet, they are also acting only as a servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, serving the multitude in the material world. Yes, we may take a leaf out of the biography of gods like Lord Rama, Lord Krishna, Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva, etc., to understand how evolved these people are and how they have got qualified into being delivered into this Supreme Personality of Godhead. That must be our ultimate goal and aim. We must all try to reach that exalted position sooner or later. That will end our own individual minuscule identity as living entities or spirit souls and make us become once again evolved parts of the spirit whole. That is all I wanted to say in this particular video. Kindly let me know what you think of my talk on this particular matter. Please give me your own opinions, thoughts, ideas, and views so that I may blend everything together for the sake of this society. Before concluding, let me remind you that I am also a published author with Amazon Kindle and paperback. I write on spiritualism, fiction, and assorted subjects. Spiritualism happens to be my favorite subject. Till we meet in my next video, it is